Hello everyone, welcome to today's session on goods and service tax filing. So today we are going to see what are the scope and type of supplies under GST. So before we proceed with today's session, let us quickly see what we have done in our previous session. So in a previous session, we learned about the GST compliance cycle. That is from the very issuance of tax invoice or bill of supply till the filing of monthly return and finally the annual return. We learned about the different due dates of different GST returns, like for GSTR1 it's the 11th of the succeeding month or 13th of the succeeding month in case of those who have opted for quarterly returns. Then for GSTR3B it is 20th of the succeeding month or 22nd or 24th of the succeeding month based on the states. Then for CMP08 it is the 18th of the month succeeding the quarter. Then GSTR4, that is the annual return for composite dealers, it's the 30th June of the next financial year. Then similarly we learned other due dates of different GST returns like GSTR5, GSTR6, GSTR7, 8, 9 and 9C. So afterwards we also learned about the QRMP scheme, where the taxpayers whose turnover has not exceeded rupees 5 crores can opt to file the return quarterly, but they have to pay the taxes on a monthly basis based on self-assessment. Then we also learned about the CM08 return, that is the return for composition dealers, where the composition dealers can pay taxes at the rate of 1% or 3% or 5% or 6% based on the type of supplies they are executing if their turnover has not exceeded rupees 1.5 crores or 75 lakhs in some special category of states. Then we also learned about the annual GST filings, that is the annual return GSTR9, the due date being 31st December of the next financial year, and GSTR9C, which is a reconciliation statement to be filed by those taxpayers whose turnover during the preceding financial year has exceeded rupees 5 crores. Next we have learned about the e-invoicing and e-way bills. So business entities with turnover greater than 5 crores are required to generate e-invoices for B2B supplies. Similarly, for any movement of goods for value exceeding rupees 50,000, e-way bills are required to be generated mandatorily. Then we also learned about the penalties, that is levied on the late filing and the interest that is levied on the late payment of taxes. So now let us move to our today's topic, that is supply under GST. So supply is one of the most crucial topic in the GST. Without understanding what constitutes a supply, we won't be able to apply GST correctly in our businesses. So GST is a destination based tax levied on the supply of goods and services. But what does supply really mean? Does it only mean sales, or is it limited to business transactions only? Or what about the gifts and the barters? So in GST, supply is broadly defined to capture almost all economic transactions. That's what makes understanding its scope critical, especially when determining the taxability, valuation and compliances. So the term GST, that is goods and service tax, depends solely on the supplies made by the taxpayer. So the term supply is defined under section 7 of the CGST Act, which includes all forms of supplies like sale, transfer, barter, exchange, license, rentals, lease or disposals. It includes supplies made or agreed to be made for a consideration, and that too in the course or furtherance of business. That is, personal transactions are not included within the meaning of supply. Also, The definition is further expanded via Schedule 1, 2 and 3, wherein Schedule 1 constitutes the activities treated as supply even without consideration. Schedule 2 constitutes activities to be treated as supply of goods or services, and Schedule 3 constitutes activities that are neither supply of goods nor services. So, forms of supply. It includes sale, transfer, barter, exchange, lease, rental and licenses. Also, barter and exchanges are also considered as supplies. For example, leasing a machine or bartering services. These are the examples of supply. So, what is consideration in supply? Before understanding the concept of consideration in supply, let us first understand the scope of supply. Forms of supply. So, supply includes many modes like sale, transfer, barter, exchange, leases, rentals and license. For example, giving a machine on lease for 3 years is a supply. Another example is providing plumbing services in exchange for painting your shop also constitutes a supply under the GST. So the next component of supply is consideration. So consideration is the payment made in money or otherwise. Without consideration, generally it is not a supply unless it is covered by Schedule 1. For example, selling goods for rupees 1000 is taxable and constitutes a valid supply, whereas giving a car to an employee for free, we have to check if it constitutes supply as per Schedule 1 or not. Then the supply must be in the course or furtherance of business. So if it's personal, then it is not covered. For example, selling our personal furniture by an aggregator like OLX does not constitute a supply under GST. But if a dealer sells that furniture, it is a valid supply. Next, Schedule 1 constitutes supplies without consideration. So, as per Schedule 1, supply includes permanent transfer or disposal of business assets or supplies between related person or branches with separate GSTIN. It also includes supply of goods by the principal to the agent and vice versa, and import of services by a taxable person from a related person or from their own establishment outside India. For example, a head office in Mumbai sending laptop to its Delhi branch, which is separately registered under the GST and has a different GSTIN, constitutes a valid supply. Next, Schedule 2. Schedule 2 doesn't define supplies but helps to classify supply as goods or services. For example, renting of immovable property is classified as a service, whereas sale of business asset is classified as supply of goods, and construction services is considered as supply of services. So ultimately this affects the rate of tax, invoicing rules and the place of supply. So now let us move to types of supplies under GST. So supplies under GST can be categorized as taxable and exempt supplies, then interstate and intrastate supplies, then composite and mixed supplies, continuous supplies and zero rated supplies. So let us understand each of them individually. Taxable and exempt supplies. So taxable supplies are those on which GST is levied, whereas exempt supplies are those which are beyond the GST or specifically exempted by a notification by the department. So, for example, fresh fruits is an exempt supply, whereas books is a nil rated supply. Alcohol or petroleum is a non-taxable, that is, which is not within the ambit of GST, and trading of furniture constitutes a taxable supply. Next is the interstate and intrastate supplies. So interstate supply is the execution of sale or provisioning of services outside the domestic boundaries of the state, whereas intrastate supplies are those supplies which are executed within the domestic boundaries of the state. So in case of intrastate supplies, CGST and SGST is charged, that is 50% of the total tax rate is charged under the CGST and rest 50% under the SGST. Then interstate supplies. Under the interstate supplies, goods and services are traded beyond the boundaries of state. In such supplies, IGST is charged. So next is the composite and mixed supply. So when two or more supplies are naturally bundled and one is the principal, then the tax rate to be charged is that of the principal. For example, mobile phone with charger. So here mobile phone is the principal and charger will also be taxed at the rate on which mobile is taxable. In mixed supplies, two or more supplies are naturally bundled. Cut. Start. Mixed supplies. In mixed supplies, two or more supplies are not naturally bundled but offered for a single price. For example, a gift hamper of chocolates, soft drinks, perfume and other gifting items. In such a case, those items which has the highest individual GST rate, the entire hamper will be charged at that rate. Next we have continuous and zero rated supplies. So services or goods supplied on recurring basis under a contract like electricity, internet or a works contract providing work contract services to government on a recurring bill basis, then such supplies constitutes a continuous supply. In such continuous supplies, either progressive billing is done or invoices are raised periodically. Next we have zero rated. So exports and supplies to special economic zones are taxed at 0% but are still eligible to claim refund of input tax credit. But it is important here that one should not get confused with the exempt supplies. So zero rated supplies and exempt supplies are different. So exporters have two options, that is export with LUT or bond, that is without paying any GST, and second option is export on payment of IGST and then claim the refund of taxes paid. So let's take some case studies. So for a barter transaction, let us take an example. A CA provides tax consultancy to a printing agency, which in return gives a free printing services for the office of the chartered accountant. So both have made a supply and GST will be applicable on open market value of such services. Next, let us take an example of transfer to branch. So goods sent from Kolkata factory to Chennai branch, both the factory and the branch are separately registered under the GST and hence taxable as per schedule 1. Then let us take an example of composite or mixed supply. Diwali offer, buy TV and get wall mount for free plus HDMI cable for free. It is a composite or mixed supply. So if price is bundled and naturally packaged, then it is a composite supply, or else it will constitute a mixed supply. So to summarize, supply is a taxable event in GST which includes all type of transactions, that is sales, lease, barter, etc. made for a consideration in the course of business. So this brings us to the end of this session, but before concluding the session, let us have a few practical examples of supplies. So type of supplies, let us take few examples. Intra-state sales. A retailer in Mumbai sells a smartphone to a customer in the same city for rupees 20,000. If the GST rate is 18%, the CGST and the SGST would each be 9%. So CGST will be rupees 20,000 into 9%, which comes to 1800, and SGST also 20,000 into 9%, that is 1800. Total GST will be rupees 3600 and the customer has to pay rupees 20,000 plus rupees 3600, that is 23,600. This is the example of intrastate sale. Next we have interstate sale, that is a manufacturer in Delhi sells industrial equipments for rupees 1 lakh to a client in Punjab. So the goods, that is the industrial equipment, is moving from the domestic boundaries of Delhi to Punjab. Hence IGST will be charged. So the rate of IGST is 18%. Then IGST amount will be 1 lakh into 18%, which comes to rupees 18,000, and the customer has to pay rupees 1 lakh plus 18,000, which comes to rupees 1 lakh 18,000. Next we have renting of commercial property. This is the example of supply of services. So a landlord offers office space for rupees 50,000 per month. If this is an intrastate transaction, CGST and SGST will be charged each at 9%. Then the CGST will be rupees 50,000 into 9%, which comes to rupees 4,500, and SGST will also come to rupees 50,000 into 9%, that is 4,500. So the total GST will be 9,000 and the tenant has to pay rupees 5,000 plus rupees 9,000, that is 59,000. Next we have consulting services. A consultant provides advisory services for rupees 30,000. If this is an intrastate service and falls under the 18% slab, then the tax would be again calculated at CGST rupees 30,000 into 9%, which comes to 2,700, and SGST rupees 30,000 into 9%, that is 2,700. The total comes to rupees 5,400 and the client has to pay rupees 30,000 plus rupees 5,400, that is 35,400. Next we have hotel booking with breakfast. So what kind of supply is this? Is this a composite supply or a mixed supply? So let us see the question first. A hotel offers a package that includes a room stay at rupees 6,000 per night and breakfast. Since accommodation is the principal supply and the breakfast is incidental, the entire package is considered as a composite supply and not a mixed supply. Hence the GST rate applicable to accommodation, that is 12%, would apply to the entire value of package. So total GST will be 6,000 into 12%, which comes to rupees 720. Hence the customer has to pay rupees 6,000 plus rupees 720, that is 720, which comes to rupees 6720. Next we have Diwali gift hamper. So a gift hamper contains chocolates, that is 18% rate, biscuits, that is 12% rate, and soft drink, that constitutes 28% GST, which is sold for a single price at the rate of rupees 1000 per hamper. Since these are not naturally bundled and can be sold separately, it's a mixed supply. So the highest rate of GST among the items, that is 28% for the soft drink, would apply to the entire hamper. So the total GST will be 1000 into 28%, which comes to rupees 280. Hence the customer has to pay rupees 1000 plus 280, that is 1280. So this is an example of mixed supply. So these are the different type of supplies under the GST. This brings to the end of this session. Thank you.